All right, we're going to finish up chapter 7 in Joseph Campbell's Primitive Mythology today. Chapter 7 is the Animal Master, and we're in section 3, the Ritual of the Returned Blood. One of the most illuminating glimpses into the very deep well of past into which we are about to plunge, where in the long ages before mankind was struck by the principle of destiny of the vegetable kingdom, it was the mystery of the deathless animal herd and the laws of the hunt that ruled his spirit. Frobenius records in one of his accounts of his journeys in Africa. In the year 1905, in the jungle area between Kasai and Luebo in the Belgian Congo, I encountered some representatives of those hunting tribes driven from the plateau to the refuge of the Congo jungle, who have become known to the literature of Africa as pygmies. 4 of their number, 3 men and a woman, then accompanied the expedition for about a week. One day, it was toward evening, and we had already begun to get along with each other famously. There was again a pressing need for replenishments in the camp kitchen, and I asked the 3 little men if they would get us an antelope, which for them as hunters would be an easy task. They looked at me, however, in amazement, and one of them finally came out with the answer that surely they would be glad to do this little thing for us. But today it would of course be impossible, since no preparations had been made. The conclusion of what turned out to be the very long transaction was that the hunters declared themselves ready to make their preparations next morning at dawn. And with that we parted. The men then began scouting about and finally settled upon a high place on a nearby hill. Since I was very curious to know whereof the preparations of these people might consist, I got up before sunrise and hid in some bushes near the clearing that the little fellows had chosen the night before for their preparations. When it was still dark, the men arrived, but not alone. They were accompanied by the woman. The men crouched on the ground and cleared the area of all bits of growth, after which they smoothed it flat. One of them then drew something in the sand with his finger, while the other men and the woman muttered formulae of some kind in prayers, after which silence fell, while they waited for something. The sun appeared on the horizon. One of the men with an arrow in his drawn bow stepped over to the cleared ground. In a couple of moments the rays of the sun struck the drawing, and at the same instant the following took place at lightning speed. The woman lifted her hands as though reaching for the sun and uttered loudly some unintelligible syllables. The man released his arrow. The woman cried out again. Then the men dashed into the forest with their weapons. The woman remained standing a few minutes and then returned to the camp. When she had left, I came out of my hiding and saw that what had been drawn on the ground was an antelope some 4 feet long, and the arrow was stuck in its neck. While the men were gone, I wanted to return to the place to try to take a photograph, but the woman who stayed close to me kept me from doing so, and begged me earnestly to give up my plan. And so the expedition went on. The hunters caught up with us that afternoon with a beautiful buck. It had been shot with an arrow through the neck. The little people delivered their quarry and went then, with a few tufts of its hair and a calabash full of its blood, back to the place on the hill. They caught up with us again only 2 days later, and that evening, to the froth of palm wine, I brought myself to speak about the matter with the most trusting of my little trio. He was the oldest of the 3. And he told me simply that he and the others had run back to plaster the hair and blood on their drawing of the antelope, pull out the arrow, and then erase the picture. As to the sense of the operation, nothing could be learned, except that he said that if they did not do this, the blood of the antelope would be destroyed. and the erasure had to be effected at sunrise too. He pleaded earnestly that I should not let the woman know that he talked to me about these things, and he seemed indeed to be greatly worried about the consequences of his talk. For the next day our pygmies left us without saying as much as goodbye, undoubtedly at his request, who had been the leader of the little team. We need only recall the words of the Caribou Eskimo Igigarjuk to understand the meaning, and therewith also the antiquity and durability of this ideology, which is found to be the same fundamentally, whether in the jungles of the Congo or on the tundras of Hudson Bay. The blood and entrails must be covered up after a caribou has been killed. So we see that life is endless. It takes a powerful magic, is the comment of Frobenius, to spill blood and not be overtaken by the blood revenge. One thing more. The crucial point of the pygmy ceremony was that the rite should take place at dawn, the arrow flying into the antelope precisely where it was struck by a ray of the sun. For the sun is in all hunting mythologies a great hunter. He is the lion whose roar scatters the herds, whose pounce at the neck of the antelope slays it, the great eagle whose plunge traps the lamb. He is the luminous orb whose rays at dawn scatter the herds of the night sky, the stars. One sees the evidence of this primitive hunting myth in the motif so common in Paleolithic art, of the lion pouncing on the neck of the antelope that has just turned its head to look behind it, as well as in that other motif, which is one of the first to appear in ancient Sumerian art, of the solar eagle clutching an antelope in each claw. The lesson reads by analogy: the sun is the hunter, the sun's ray is the arrow, the antelope is one of the herd of the stars, ergo, as tomorrow night will see the star return, so tomorrow the antelope. Nor has the hunter killed the beast as a personal willful act, but according to the provisions of the Great Spirit, and in this way nothing is lost. We'll stop there. Next time, we'll be into Chapter 8. Thank you for joining me.